Okay, today we're going to further our discussion of one of the presidential candidates. We're going to talk about the Democratic and Republican candidates' positions on Iraq. First, we have the Clintons' Iraq positions. If President Bush is not in the war, when Hillary is president, she will. She wants to start a phased redeployment with Hillary's first days in office. The most important part of the plan is to end our military involvement in Iraq's civil war and immediately start bringing our troops home. As president, one of Hillary's first official actions will be to convene the Joint Chiefs of Staff for Secretary of Defense and National Security Council. She would direct them to draw up a clear, visible plan to bring our troops home starting within the first 60 days of her administration. She would also direct the Department of Defense and Department of Veterans Affairs to prepare a comprehensive plan to provide the highest quality health care benefits and care to every service member, including every member of the National Guard and Reserves and their families. That kind of costs a lot.
I know.
Securing stability in Iraq as we bring our troops home. She would also support the appointment of a high-level UN representative similar to those appointed in Afghanistan, Bosnia, and Kosovo. And we all know how well that's worked. To help broker peace among the parties in Iraq. A new incentive diplomatic initiative to the region. In her first days of office, Hillary would convene a regional stabilization group composed of key allies and other global powers in all states bordering Iraq. The mission of this group would be to develop and implement a strategy to create a stable Iraq. They have three specific goals. Non-interference, working with the UN representative, the group would work to convince Iraq's neighbors to refrain from getting involved in the civil war. Well, they already are, folks. Mediation. The group would attempt to mediate among the different sectarian groups in Iraq with the goal of attaining promises or fundamental points of disputes. They've been trying that for thousands of years and it hasn't worked. Reconstruction funding. The members of the group would hold themselves and other countries to their past pledges to provide funding in Iraq and will encourage additional contributions to meet Iraq's extensive needs. As our forces redeploy out of Iraq, she would organize a multi-billion-dollar international effort funded by a wide range of donor states under the UN and High Commissioner for Refugees to address the needs of Iraqi refugees. As we replace military forces with diplomatic and global leadership, she will not lose sight of our realistic strategic interests in the region. She would devote the resources we need to fight terrorism and order specialized units to engage in narrow and targeted operations against Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations in the region. Fat chance.
Obama. Iraq's political leaders have made no progress in resolving the political differences at the heart of their civil war. The main goal is to bring our troops home. He will immediately begin to remove our troops from Iraq. He will remove 1 to 2 combat brigades every month and have all of our combat brigades out of Iraq within 16 months. Oh, I thought he was bringing them all home immediately.
He doesn't want it to look like it was in Vietnam when people were being pulled off of rooftops, or like in Somalia when we ran to the ocean as fast as we could.
But they all know the plan. Anyway, Obama will make it clear that we will not build any permanent bases in Iraq. He will keep some troops in Iraq to protect our embassy and diplomats. If Al-Qaeda attempts to build a base within Iraq, he will keep troops in Iraq or elsewhere in the region to carry out targeted strikes on Al-Qaeda.
No, once they start out, they are not going back in. History shows that.
Press Iraq's leaders to reconcile. The best way to press Iraq's leaders to take responsibility for their future is to make it clear that we are leaving. It is?
They never saw what happened after the British left all of those countries. Chaos. And they're still in chaos.
As we remove our troops, Obama will engage representatives from all levels of Iraqi society, in and out of government, to seek a new accord on Iraq's constitution and governance. The United Nations will play a central role in this regional diplomacy.
If they'd have played a role to begin with, there'd be no problems. You know, the United Nations has virtually no authority to do anything and not the will to do what is needed to be done.
So on this regional diplomacy, Obama plans to launch the most aggressive diplomatic effort in recent American history to reach a new compact on the stability of Iraq and the Middle East. This effort will include all of Iraq's neighbors, including Iran and Syria. This compact will aim to secure Iraq's borders, keep neighboring countries from meddling inside Iraq, isolate Al-Qaeda, support reconciliation among Iraq's sectarian groups, and provide financial support for Iraq's reconstruction. The humanitarian initiative. Obama believes that America has a moral and security responsibility to confront Iraq's humanitarian crisis. 2 million Iraqis are refugees. 2 million more are displaced inside their own country. and Obama will form an international working group to address this crisis, who will provide at least $2 billion. Wow! To expand services to Iraqi refugees in neighboring countries and ensure that Iraqis inside their own country can find a safe haven.
Due to the Republicans' John McCain's position on the war in Iraq. He wants a greater military commitment is now necessary if we are to achieve the long-term success. More troops are necessary to clear and hold insurgent strongholds, to provide security for rebuilding local institutions and economies, to dismantle Al-Qaeda, to train the Iraqi army. The Americans' ultimate strategy is to give the Iraqis the capabilities to govern themselves and secure their own country without our help.
The current force structure and power vacuum persisting in many areas of the country demands a more robust counter-insurgency strategy. Iraqi and American forces must not only use force to clear areas occupied by insurgents, but to stay and hold these areas to deny them as a base for insurgent forces and allow economic and political development to occur in a secure environment.
Building a capable Iraqi army is central to the America's plan for securing the area. The U.S. must accelerate the training and equipping the Iraqi forces and be pleased to enable them to play a key role in their securing Iraq. And ultimately, the key to Iraq's future lays in the hands of its own people, government, and armed forces. Early withdrawal of U.S. troops would condemn Iraq to civil war and intervention by its neighbors and energize Al-Qaeda and other jihadists across the globe. It would gravely jeopardize the America's safety around the world.
And only by controlling the violence in Iraq can we pave the way for political settlement. But once the Iraqi government wields greater authority, it will be incumbent upon Iraqi leaders to take significant steps on their own. These include a commitment to go after the militias, a reconciliation process for insurgents and Ba'athis, more equitable distribution of government resources, provincial elections that will bring Sunnis into the government, and a large increase in employment-generating economic projects.
It is important to focus military efforts on insurgents, particularly against Sunni fighters using violence to strengthen their political position. There must also be a greater emphasis on non-military components promoting economic development and representative accountable government.
In territories newly secured by the clear, hold, and build counterinsurgency strategy, many of the critical steps to succeeding in Iraq can begin to be implemented. Average Iraqis will be more secure as militias and terrorists are reined in and violence reduced. Iraqis need to see tangible improvements in their daily lives. The support for their new government will falter. Sunnis need to know that if they abandon violence, they will have a role in the political process. And the Shia need to know that security will be provided by coalition and government forces, not by private militias. Kurds need assurance that their gains will not be jeopardized by sectarian violence.
The Pentagon currently has a policy of rotating our generals in and out of Iraq almost as frequently as rotating troops. If I was president, I would put a halt to this.
John McCain believes Syria and Iran have aided and abetted the violence in Iraq for too long. Syria has refused to crack down on Iraqi insurgents and foreign terrorists operating from within its territory. Iraq has aided the most extreme and violent Shia militias, providing them with training, weapons, and technology that they have used to kill American troops.
The answer is not to enter into unconditional dialogues with these two dictatorships from a position of weakness. The answer is for an international community to apply real pressure to Syria and Iraq to change their behavior. The United States must bolster its regional military posture to make clear to Iran our determination to protect our forces in Iraq and deter Iranian intervention in the country.
If efforts in Iraq do not retain the support of the American people, the war will be lost as soundly as if our forces were defeated in battle. A renewed effort at home starts with explaining precisely what is at stake in this war to ensure that Americans fully understand the high cost of a military defeat. Failure would expose the United States to national security threats for generations. Defeat in the war would lead to much more violence in Iraq, greater embolden Iran, undermine U.S. allies such as Israel, likely lead to wider conflict, result in a terrorist safe haven in the heart of the Middle East, and gravely damage U.S. credibility throughout the world.
The American people also deserve to know that the path ahead will be long and difficult. The stakes for America could not be higher.